Today I'll be changing the rear control rod on my 2007 Lexus LS460L. There was a distinct knocking, clanking sound when I reached down here, put my fingers on it, and moved the vehicle. You can distinctly hear that. Locking lug nut needs that key in order to function. Good. This nut here, I'm using a 19mm socket. When you find yourself under here, you're going to see 1, 2, up in there, 3, 10mm nuts that you have to take off, turn into this plastic piece. You'll have to use an extension in order to reach the recessed 10mm nut up here. Once you have all the bolts removed, it should come down. You might have to work it off some. Here, I'm using a 17mm wrench without the one on the other side. It is loosening appropriately and by hand at this point, which I did not think I would be able to do, interestingly enough. Here I've been able to loosen this 17mm ended wrench nut with a wrench, and it is coming right out, as you can see right here. I don't know how to make that, but it did. Where this comes down, sits in there loose. So we will move on to our next step. See it sitting in there loose. There's a lip on the back side of this. Just holding that in there. So now that we're down here, you can see that I'll need to loosen this 19mm nut. Arm hole around here, that we may be able to pop this out. Reverting to the hammer. There she went. So after the hammer method, you can loosen this enough to drive it out of there. After a careful review of this arm control, you can tell that this moves way too freely. Well, I can't replicate the act that it does on the hub itself, but that's way too much movement in there for it to be an effective unit. This is the new control arm, and you can see there's much less play in it. It still moves, but it does not move freely. We'll install this in the same way that it was removed. As that drives in there, I will reuse the old nut, as the new one that it came with on the new arm was much smaller than, as we all know, the Lexus quality to be. just hope that this new arm will give me the same performance as the OEM. Before I put on any new nuts or reuse any of the old nuts, I do like to apply anti-seize to the threads of the bolts or any part, give it the anti-seize property. I find that a useful thing for me to consistently do on all of my reinstalls. This is the nut that I removed from the old arm. It is much more heavy duty. Install the new arm. I want you to notice the new nut. This is the nut that this manufacturer thought was applicable for my Lexus LS460L. This is the nut I took off of there. It's got a nice washer base, much larger. So I will reuse this. Now I applied anti-seize compound to the new arm threads, and this reassures that in an environment like Iowa, where we lay salt down during the winter, that I can remove this at a later time. We also apply anti-seize to the upper bolt threads, that when I reinstall, it will have the same properties as to remove it. I think at this point it's important to note that I'm going to reinstall the upper bolt and nut loosely, as I've only loosely tightened this lower nut. Now this is going on much the same way that it came off for me. It seemed to thread on the other side without destroying the bolt and its threads. Well, I'm going to hand tighten this, as it appears that it's all the tighter it ever gets in there. I'm going to re-tighten this with my hands to a point where I can no longer tighten it with my hands. There. Here I will use my 17mm wrench again to tighten this. Down here I'm going to hand tighten this bolt and then use my boxing wrench to draw it tight. That is the point at where I've hand tightened this, and I do not want to over tighten it. From here, I will torque it down to its specs. Okay, I'm tightening this to 100 foot-pound torque with the proper torque wrench. There you are. Furthermore, I'll tighten this 100 foot-pound torque. Okay, here I have a box and wrench, 17mm on the nut side, and then I have my torque wrench here, 17mm on the bolt side. And I will tighten this to 100 foot-pounds of torque. That's there, I think. Okay, there you are. Okay. There we are. This is new. So now here, I will reinstall the plastic cover. Now I will reinstall these 10mm nuts onto this plastic piece, this plastic cover. Now that I have all 1, 2, 3 of those installed, I will put on the tire. Got everything reinstalled now. I will put back on our tire.